It's February 1797, and somewhere in London, behind thick stone walls, a group of men are, staring at a number. The number is falling. The Bank of England's gold reserves, the physical metal that backs every single banknote, in circulation, are nearly gone. A small French force has just landed on British soil. Panic is spreading from town to town. People are showing up at their local banks, demanding their money back. Not paper, not promises, gold. And there isn't enough. By the 27th of February, the reserve has dwindled to less than £1 million. The total face value of notes in circulation is more than 10 times that figure. The men in that room have a choice. They can admit the system is broken, or they can do something that has never really been done before. They can ask the world to keep believing, without anything real to back it up. And here is what makes that moment extraordinary. It worked. To understand what that moment meant, you have to go back. Further than 1797. You have to go back to a world where money was physical, where trust had weight, where if you wanted to know if your wealth was real, you could hold it in your hand. In the 1600s, England had no central bank, no national currency in any modern sense. Wealthy merchants stored their gold and silver with goldsmiths, men with vaults, men with locks, men who issued handwritten receipts for what was deposited. Those receipts began to circulate. People started trading the paper instead of the metal. It was easier, it was faster. But it was fragile, because every receipt was only as good as the goldsmith who wrote it. And goldsmiths, it turned out, were not always trustworthy. Some lent out gold they didn't have. Some disappeared. Some charged interest rates so punishing, 20–30%, that borrowing was almost impossible for anyone who wasn't already powerful. And the government? The government was no different. In 1672, King Charles II owed an enormous sum to London's goldsmiths. Money borrowed to fund wars, to fund his court, to fund the extravagance of a monarchy that believed its own myth. And then one day, because he was the king, he simply decided not to pay it back. That was the system. Raw power dressed up as finance, no rules, no recourse, no institution strong enough to say no to a crown. But England was changing, trade was expanding, wars were becoming more expensive. The 9 Years' War with France was draining the treasury faster than taxes could fill it. The government needed money at scale, not from goldsmiths who could be ignored, not from merchants who could be threatened. It needed something new. And in 1691, a Scottish merchant named William Paterson had an idea. Paterson's idea was not complicated, but it was audacious. He proposed that ordinary citizens, merchants, tradesmen, landowners, could lend their money to the government, not as a gift, as an investment. In return, they would receive interest. And together, all of these lenders would become part of a new institution. A bank unlike any other, not a private goldsmith, not a royal treasury. Something in between, something new. The proposition was simple. Lend the government £1.2 million, and in return, the subscribers would be incorporated as a company. The Governor and Company of the Bank of England. It took 11 days to raise the full amount. 1,268 people invested, from wealthy merchants to ordinary citizens. The Royal Charter was granted on the 27th of July, 1694. And almost immediately, something strange happened. The bank began issuing notes, paper promises, notes that said in effect, "This piece of paper is worth gold. Come to us and we will give it to you." But here is the thing that nobody said out loud. The bank didn't keep all the gold. It couldn't. It lent some of it out. It issued more notes than it held in metal. It was operating from almost the very beginning on something that wasn't fully backed by anything physical. It was operating on the assumption that not everyone would come asking at the same time. It was operating on trust. And for a while, that was enough. The bank grew. The government kept borrowing. Notes circulated. Trade expanded. The idea that a piece of paper could represent value, that an institution could stand behind that paper, began to feel normal. But there was always gold. Somewhere, there was always gold. Until there wasn't. For the next 100 years, the Bank of England became the spine of British finance. It managed the government's debt. It issued currency. It became the lender that other banks turned to when they were in trouble. Not through law, not through force, through reputation, through scale. Through the slow accumulation of trust built across decades of surviving crises, of paying obligations, of being the institution that didn't collapse when others did. Britain became the most powerful trading nation on earth. The empire expanded. Commerce ran through London like blood through a body, and at the center of all of it, setting the rhythm, controlling the flow, was the bank. And underpinning all of it, supposedly, was gold. The gold standard. The rule that said every note could be exchanged for bullion at a fixed rate. It was the anchor, the guarantee, the thing that made the paper real. It was the answer to the oldest question in finance. Why should I trust this? Because you can always exchange it for something that exists. Because there is a fixed quantity of it. Because the bank is obligated, by law, by charter, by reputation, to honor that promise. That was the story. But the story had a weakness nobody wanted to name. The system only worked if everyone believed it. If enough people stopped believing, if enough of them showed up at once demanding gold, the anchor would snap. The gap between what was promised and what actually existed would become impossible to hide. And in 1797, that is exactly what happened. The French had landed at Fishguard, a small force, a minor incursion by military standards. But what it triggered was not a battle. It was a panic. Word spread. Banks in the north of England began to fail. People in Newcastle, Sunderland, Durham, they showed up demanding specie, demanding the gold and silver their notes were supposedly worth. The provincial banks turned to the Bank of England for support. And the Bank of England watched its reserves drain away week by week until there was almost nothing left. On the 26th of February, 1797, the Privy Council met in emergency session. The numbers were stark. More than £10 million in notes were circulating. Less than £1 million in gold remained. If a significant portion of note holders showed up the next morning, the bank would be finished. The system would be finished. And so they made a decision that would quietly change the nature of money itself. They suspended payments. The Bank of England would no longer exchange its notes for gold. That was the official announcement, clean, procedural. But what it actually meant was something far more radical. From that moment, a Bank of England note was not backed by gold. It was backed by nothing except the collective decision to keep believing that it was worth something. The paper did not represent metal. It represented trust in an institution, and trust in the idea that everyone else would also keep trusting. The suspension was supposed to last 3 weeks. It lasted 24 years. And here is the thing that should stop you in your tracks. The economy did not collapse. Trade continued. The government financed its wars. Britain defeated Napoleon. The pound remained a functioning currency. Notes still changed hands. People still used them to buy bread, to pay wages, to settle debts. The paper worked. Without the gold, And when convertibility was eventually restored in 1821, when the official story resumed that notes were backed by metal, the men who ran the system knew something they could never quite unsay. They had seen what money really was. It wasn't gold. It had never really been gold. It was the belief. That was the whole thing. The belief was the thing. And that belief could be maintained, could be manufactured, managed, protected by an institution powerful enough to hold the story together. In 1931, Britain faced another crisis. The Great Depression, investors fleeing, a run on the pound. And once again, on the 21st of September, the gold standard was abandoned, this time permanently. The pound fell 25% overnight, and the economy began to recover. Today, the Bank of England does not hold gold to back its currency. No major central bank does. The pound in your pocket is not a claim on anything physical. It is not a receipt. It is not a promise to give you metal. It is, in the most precise sense of the word, a belief, a shared agreement, an institutional declaration that this piece of paper, this number on a screen, is worth something, because we have all agreed that it is. Most people never think about this, and that is, in its own way, the most remarkable part of the story. Because the system works precisely because we don't think about it. The moment enough people start asking the question, what is this actually backed by, is the moment the answer becomes dangerous. The Bank of England learned that in 1797. They learned it again in 1931. William Patterson built an institution to solve a simple problem. The government needed money and couldn't be trusted to borrow it honestly. What he actually built was a machine for manufacturing trust at scale. And every central bank that followed, every currency that exists today, is running the same machine. The money in your wallet is real because enough people believe it is real. And the institution in Threadneedle Street, the one they used to call the old lady of the city, has been managing that belief for over 300 years. Not with gold, with the story. The story is the system, and you are part of it. If you find value in understanding the systems behind wealth, power, and history, consider subscribing. Here on Silent Standard, we explore the financial strategies, institutions, and ideas that shape the world we live in today. Thank you for watching.